Right. Okay, thank you, councillors and staff. Notice hereby given that the ordinary meeting of West Coast Council will be held at West Coast Council Chambers tonight, Tuesday, 25th of October. Recording of the meeting in accordance with the Local Government Regulation 2015. The public is advised that the proceedings of the meeting of the council will be recorded on digital media to assist the preparation of the minutes. Acknowledgement of country. West Coast Council acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land in which we gather today and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. Item 297 is apologies. So we've got apologies from Councillor Geraghty, Councillor Newman and Councillor Irons-Sykes. All other councillors are present. Item 298, peculiar interest. This time of the meeting, anyone with a peculiar interest of any item on the agenda may announce it now or just prior to the item being discussed. Item 299, confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Tuesday the 27th of September 2022, a copy of which has been previously circulated to councillors. Someone like to move in being true and accurate? Move to Councillor Graham, second to Councillor Evans. Put it to a vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Item 300, public partition and question time. There's no one in the gallery. General Manager,
no, we didn't have any. We didn't have any questions from the public.
No questions. Thank you. We'll keep moving then. Item 301, council raised issues and information. So questions on notice. We've got a few questions on notice, or a couple of questions on notice. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Mayor. This is in relation to Headley Falls Park, which is a recreation and mountain bike hub here in the central part of Queenstown. My question and questions posed to me from the public has been, when do council plan to commence refurbishments on this central recreation park, and what would be the time frame for completion? Now, in posing that question, Mayor, I'm not looking for the standard answer when it's actually weather permitting, or when it's actually scheduled as far as work planning might go. The highlight to me now is that the park itself is now a co-function facility. It's a children's playground, it's a barbecue area, it's also a hub for mountain biking. So where we once manicured it to suit the children, we now have extra responsibility because of that we've taken on. So to look at these maintenance issues, we have to really schedule it prior to school holiday periods, so that it is presenting better to our visiting population, and also I think our ratepayers as well are keeping an eye on these things. So that's my question. How do we schedule it so that the Headley Falls Park is brought up to some sort of presentation to marry in with that tourism season?
General Manager might be able to answer that question.
So we've, in terms of maintenance, is scheduled not just reactively but proactively, and it's scheduled in accordance with the budget. So to enhance sort of operational maintenance of any of our parks will require an increase in operational budget, and that would require council to make some decisions about either what would not be funded or covering that loss. Specifically on Headley Falls Park, we have appointed designers for Headley Falls Park and Howards Park in Zern in accordance with the annual plan. They expect to be delivering designs to council in April 2023 for construction next financial year. The Labor Party in the lead up to the federal election promised $1.2 million for playgrounds and parks to the West Coast on the basis of council's advocacy. We understand they'll be delivered in tonight's budget and therefore be available for council next year. So we expect the refurbishment of Howards Park, Headley Falls Park and the plaza in Queenstown will cost about $1.2 million, which will be funded through that. We'll be recommending to council will be funded through that grant. Given that there's a relatively close time frame for a major refurbishment of Headley Falls Park, I wouldn't, in the absence of specific council direction, be spending additional maintenance money there. I'd focus the maintenance budget for public facilities in other areas that aren't about to undergo a major capex renewal. And you can see that the teams have been busy in locations like Mitres Siding, PCYC. We've got people out of Lake Burbury and things like that. So that's been my general approach. Of course, if it is a priority for council and council want to redirect resources to there, it would be something that councillors could make a motion on.
Happy with that answer, councillor?
Not specifically, no. It's an immediate problem now that, to me, in its untidy state.
In what
Personally,
way is it untidy state? In what way? The fence is a couple of
The
parts.
fence is very rusty. It's got a black mould sort of coating on it. The appearance is certainly unkept. It's not good for the perception of the town itself. That's what I'm saying. And it exists now. I know we have these other processes in place for 2023, but do we just sit down for another 6 months and say, well, it's too bad, too sad? That's the way it is. Whereas I would look at some sort of rectification works. There may be an excuse why we haven't carpeted it because of the rust that rushes down off the iron railings. But, you know, a coat of paint with a roller just to dress up, you know, to sort of mask the rust and do something with the mould. I mean, it is a central part to me. It's to have it to say that, you know, we'll do something in the future. It's not solving the problem right here now as it exists with its untidy appearance. In a hub that, you know, councils incorporated themselves into tourism now, you pick up one end of the stick. I think you have an immediate obligation to actually do something about something if it's an dilapidated state as it is now. So whether someone here wants to work with me to move a motion at this stage, or do we just pass it on to the next council, delay, I'm not sure. I might have input from other councillors, how they feel. I'm not just a one-voice person.
Councillors, any other discussion on the matter?
I think council levels are good. It's the amount of people who use it definitely needs an upgrade.
Well, that's gone out for design, but in the interim, is there something we may be able to do to brighten up the fence, if that's the main issue with the fence? I know it. When we done the original upgrades there, the fence was looked at as being replaced, but at the time we had the public against it, given that it's nostalgia of that fence in that area. But if it does need some work on it, is that something we can get a pricing from operation to see how much it would be just to carter it, give it a bit of a clean up, and that may last us through till April next year, when hopefully we get the designs complete, and then if we can fast track the Headley Falls Park as being the first park we look at, as long as with Howes Park, of course.
Even fast track there, it would still be April the following year, probably, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it depends on whether.
It would be.
Through you, Mayor, the fence itself would be any heritage distance there? No?
No, I don't think it is. No.
Okay.
No, it was just the fact that some public people, given it had been there for so long, didn't want the fence removed at the time, but it's come to a stage where it probably does need.
That was one of the parks identified by the 0 to 5s that they wanted us to fence properly, didn't they?
Yeah.
And at that stage, the Howes Park wasn't the hub of recreation in Queenstown. I guess you could say it was. We had the playground there, equipment, but now it's, as you mentioned, it has become a wider place of enjoyment for the community. A lot more people now are using the barbecues, and also the mountain bike hub there as well. A lot more people in that area.
Just from talking to people, just that park, some of the other parks around the West Coast, we've got brighten up just with some paint and general tidying up, it doesn't have to be new equipment and stuff, but we're coming in and seeing about the grey trap wall behind it, things like that. So if we could look at some paint around some of the parks to brighten up and make it more attractive.
Well, Howes Park's going to be done for a redevelopment. I guess that's why a lot of this hasn't been spent, a lot of money hasn't been spent on it, because they've been earmarked for redesign and redevelopment.
And just to be clear, the budget does not allow us to do all the work required on even just our parks. So even if you're looking at parks and playgrounds, we would not be able to go there and fund all the maintenance that staff would want to fund in our current budget. So I am happy to go away and develop costings if you can give me specific things that you want to do in each park. But it should be understood that then that budget, whether it's in staff time or resources or cost, is coming off some other activity council might be doing. So it is a matter of council deciding to reallocate resources to those activities from another area, and that would mean that we would do less in some other facility. So I'd encourage councillors to actually be specific about where they would want us to do less. Otherwise, they'd be leaving it to staff to go, well, that's the lowest priority, so we won't do that.
So 3 year be taken from that. It's clear for all of us to understand that on an annual maintenance program, there's no planning in there to undertake those tasks as annual maintenance or standard maintenance.
There might be at some point, but certainly not in the near future. We don't have any works planned like that. We've had instructions from council around the old school. We've been doing works on PCYC. We're currently, there's a range of other works that are ongoing, and then it would be a matter for council to say, well, we'd like you to spend less in a particular area and then refocus those resources on the parks. Particularly over this time of year, staff will be very busy with mowing and weeding and things like that. So,
Trying to roll out the capex.
yep, roll out the capex, stormwater. So there are some options for councillors to say that those things not get done, and in turn, but we wouldn't be able to give you those costings or timeframes tonight. We'd have to
Go away and look at it. I guess that does highlight that in the past we have had tours around the communities with councillors looking at all these things, and I think that's probably, before the annual plan comes out, I think that's probably something we need to reinvigorate and get actioning again, so we can go around and we can look at all these things and then advise staff where we'd like to see more of the maintenance budget spent. We do leave it up to the staff to make the decisions, probably more than what we should, and I guess these are things that do come up quite often.
Interesting there, just again, looking at the fence in question here at Headley Falls Park, it looks like some maintenance started there and it was ceased for whatever reason. So something's been allocated to start with it and then it ceased. So I don't know what that's about. So I don't know how the system works or what that would have been about. But here we are saying we need to allocate other resources. The work did commence, but now it's stopped. So
Which work are you referring?
it must have been on the budget at some stage.
What work are you referring to?
Well, it looks like the Stitch Street side has certainly been carted, a section of it. So
Yeah, so the whole fence has been cartured maybe 2 years ago. It was power cleaned. Then the front section was cleaned in advance of the public opening of Mount Owen, but there was never any plans to do the rest again. It was in preparation for that event.
So I guess moving forward, if we need some costings on what it would cost to brighten up, or just at least carture that fence. At least as an interim, and that'll give us until the new design comes out, and making sure that the fence is in the design for the new park.
going forward now, we need to find reasons to do these little jobs rather than find reasons not to. This is the point I'm trying to make. So I know there's a process that council have, but the community have to bear the brunt of complaints, from families and tourists. The system is wrong.
Well, just to be clear, we're spending more on parks and garden, public facilities and facilities than we have done ever in the past.
Saying that, but we're not doing the job today.
No, but over, because it's not just, we don't just have one park, one facility. So overall, our activity in parks, facilities, public conveniences has increased. So overall, we're spending more time, more resources on these things. And it is important to be really clear with councillors that your main job is to actually decide what we're not going to do, because there is not sufficient. If any of us, staff, walk to any of our facilities, any of our parks, we could probably spend close to our total annual budget on each facility or park. So we identify these jobs, and it would be identified somewhere that, yep, the fence should be cleaned, the fence should be painted, this should be done, that should be done. So it's not a matter of us saying that we don't think that's a good thing to do. It's a matter of we have a set budget that probably only covers 30 to 40% of what it would take to maintain to the standard staff would like, and then to the standard councillors would like as well. So in that environment of us not having sufficient resources to maintain things to the standard that any of us would like, we are forced to prioritise things. So in that sense, councillors' main role, as is my main role often with the staff, is not to come up with new ideas, but rather say, well, no, we're not doing that, we're not doing that, we're not doing that. It's a process of prioritisation. And we are mainly guided at the moment in terms of trying to maintain safety, focusing on assets that aren't due for a major renewal, and on focusing on those assets that have the highest uses as well. So it is very difficult for us as staff, given that we would like to do all this work well. So I would always encourage councillors, if you are going to ask us to do something, just make sure that you're also thinking about what it is that you're happy that we don't do.
All right, and on that, council's responsible for some of that increased activity in there, okay, in co-partnership to bring in the mountain biking, right? So with that extra activity that council has introduced there, they also pick up that responsibility to have that, that kind of percentage correctly. So,
yeah, as we do with most of our other facilities. I know councillors have raised concerns about the old school before. We've had concerns raised about parks in nearly all our towns. We've had concerns raised about public toilets. We've had concerns raised about basketball stadiums, halls. So all our facilities have people raising concerns with us on them.
the facilities over there are fine. I'm saying, like, the mountain bike's not good. The rides and things, swings that kids use, they're not too bad. I'm saying it's just the cosmetic stuff. It's
Yep.
the appearances. You drive up and go, ugh, is this the best this town can do? That's all.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm saying is we get that on nearly every single facility that we have. So it is a matter for councillors to tell us what
we need, where we need to
where we
bring the money
can.
from. And that's why I was asked if we can get a costing. Maybe we tell you not to worry about doing the PCYC building and we do the park or something. But that's up to us to make that decision. And until we've got a cost, though, it's a bit hard for.
So just to be clear, we are costing up power washing the fence, or are we costing up power washing and painting, or?
Well, I'd suggest we just power wash it at this stage, given that we're probably going to be pulling it out in 12 months' time, if council are happy with that.
I'm not sure the power wash would deal with the rust situation, but I'm not a maintenance expert, but yeah.
So making the fence look good.
Respectful, yeah.
Good. And just for Headley Falls Park.
It'd be a good partnership project with the Lions Club.
Well, possibly could be, councillor.
Yeah, that's all crazy Lions Club.
We did start working on the fence some time ago.
Otherwise, it was good men's sheds, jobs and things like that. Work for the day was good for that.
Okay. So we're happy with that, councillor Evans, that we'll ask the general manager to look at some costing on power washing the fence and make it respectable, or make it look respectable. Bring it back to us and we'll make a decision on where we move the funding for that activity from. Okay. No other questions on notice. We've got 2 questions without notice. Councillor Evans, again.
Yes, just again, it's sitting at the Heavy Falls Park this time, just a question on where are we at with the Queenstown Recreation Oval, which is also a co-facility for tourism and sport and recreation. We had discussions with the general manager to say that we're going to progress roadworks and design. My question is, how is that going? The current state again of this facility is fairly untidy. So again, where are we at with relation to those design works and reconstruction that we discussed some 12 months ago?
Yep, so the design work's underway, and he's been, the consultants have been on site and done their site visits, so we're now awaiting the initial designs and report. I think in terms of works that have been done there, we do continue to do maintenance there, but as per my previous answer, it is a matter of prioritising. I think this time of year we do see a spike in complaints around untidiness, largely due to weed and lawn growth, and that happens every year, but we don't have a workforce that enlarges over these months, and it is a very busy time of the year for us as we are prepping CapEx, as well as dealing with an increased requirement for operational maintenance, not just in parks and gardens, but also roads. We also start to see an increase in waste management. So it is common this time of year that we start to see those increased in complaints.
Just adding to that, are there any areas of administration that we get downsides on to increase the workforce out on the street with this mowing and maintenance? I'm not sure. I'm not running this business. That's the consideration of council going forward. So if we're looking at council reform, or we're looking for outsourcing or resource sharing, we've got to be really mindful of where these facilities are at. And the position council's in, that they're saying they can't afford to do this, or they need to change their structure or their resource management to do that. So are we unbalanced in admin versus on the ground maintenance, footpaths, roads, range rubbish?
No, we have a very high percentage of outdoor workforce compared to other councils. Councils could, of course, choose to reduce the administrative workforce, but then you would need to accept lower standards of service in key areas such as customer service, responding to customers, preparation for council meetings, developing new projects, advocacy, economic community development. So, for example, if council were to say we want more outdoor staff and we don't want an overall budget increase, I would need direction about what areas of council we were not going to move forward with. And we have had these discussions around long-term budgets in the past, and that would mean things like not having community grants or community development officers, not having economic development officers, not applying for grants anymore, not doing as much advocacy, perhaps not responding to customers even in the fashion that we do now, and taking longer to respond to customers, not developing new projects. That they are matters for council to consider what they would want to do, but whenever you remove staff from an area, you're going to experience a loss in service in those areas. And there are certain things that council has to do, like planning. We're required to. We need to present an annual plan to council. We need to present annual reports. There are certain things that are legislated that we can't stop doing. So then it would be all the other things that we do stop doing. And I think that would be very difficult given the current directions to me from council around improving digitisation, improving customer service. So you would need to review those if you wanted to increase the outdoor workforce.
It is difficult, but it's just about starting the conversation and looking about the way we do business. Have we got it right? And you come back with some scary answers there, GM, and all of a sudden we fall back into place. But I think the time now, when we look at the increasing tourism numbers, the increasing demand of our ratepayers for space and recreation, we need to sort of revisit where that's at, where those schedules of maintenance are, and how those facilities are maintained.
And I guess this was touched on this time of the year. We do, every year we have the same complaints about weeds and the length of grass around our community. Every year, and it has been for the last umpteen years since I've been on council, every year we have the same issue for this first period during spring and summer till the guys can catch up. I think we'll always, and that's why when we do new development, we try to remove the need for maintenance with regards to new grassed areas and try to remove the conditions where weeds will grow in with the loose gravel, etc. So it is something we do quite often work on during our designs of our new projects. Well, it's one thing that we have put in place, that we will try to remove grass situations wherever we can to eliminate this and to reduce the workload during this time of the year. Saying that, I thought I'd send an email in response to your email, councillor, but I found that it was too big to send with all your photos, and I did ask the general manager to look at the lease that the Lions Club have got, whether it's Lions Club responsibility to look after that area near the bridge. I'm not sure whether that fell into that, so that's something we need to look at as well. So there's a possibility that the Lions Club should be weeding that area also. So we need to look at the lease arrangement with regard to that. I'm not sure whether it was in there. I'm sure that I've got a copy of the lease, but I was unable to locate it in due course, but I'll find it. With regard to that issue with the bridge, or just outside the bridge at the recreation ground, because that does fall under the part that the Lions Club has got the lease on. So.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor. It's interesting, GM said that processes are in place.
Yep.
Design work's being done for things put over, so that's good.
Thank you, Councillor. No further discussion on that point, councillors? No. Councillor Butterfield.
I just had two questions. From talking to people, could we ever review the signage in Strawn that directs visitors to the main car park and the public toilets? The public toilets in the centre of town are not easily identified if you're unaware where they are, especially with ones that slip away place for maintenance. So if we have a couple of signs just directing people from that car park area to the public toilets, so trying to leave it that way.
I understand we had signs on the slipway toilets.
Yeah, through matters, we've put additional ones up in the last week or so, temporary ones until the other ones turn up, solid ones. For some reason or not, there's been a delay with once your water signs, it take a while to get them, but I do believe the lads have put up some temporary ones as early as last week to try and alleviate that problem.
And maybe just some, as you come in some ways in Strawn, maybe just directing visitors to the main car park area as well. Confused with it.
Yes, so as part of the Strawn redevelopment, there is going to be a look at how we get people into the main car park area. A lot of that problem will be alleviated because those car parks in front of the visitor centre are going to be removed, so that area is going to be park land. So it's going to be less confusing to people in the sense there won't be two car parking precincts, there'll be only one. We are also, as a part of that, looking at the safety of Harold Street. Currently with traffic coming down the street, it is causing safety issues in the wharf, and we have been asked by Tasports and other users of the wharf to look at doing something to make that much safer. One option would be to look at making Harold Street one way going up and prevent people then coming into that first area, which would alleviate a lot of the problem with people getting confused around which car park to be in. But as the Strawn waterfront upgrades are rolled out, there will be new signage installed throughout that precinct.
The other question I had, the main streets in some of our towns, there's lots of weeds and that are kept in certain areas. Just one that comes to the top of the mind is in Strawn on the main street, from the corner of Harold Street to the extension
There's always a big level of debris build up on Harold Street as well, isn't there?
I guess the other thing I would suggest councillors is to put a work request in if you come across any of these things, so that the operations guys are aware of it. Sometimes they probably don't drive around looking for issues around the town because they're busy doing other things. So if we can get work requests into the system, then they can be addressed. It is an obligation of ours as well, just to assist in that way. Or if any of the residents do mention something along these lines, that, either point them in the right direction with placing a work request in the system, or take it on ourselves to place them in the system for the operations staff to be able to action it.
I think that is very important at the moment, given that there is no service levels around things like cleaning out gutters or weeding. So there is no guidance from councillors to say this is how often certain streets need to be sprayed or weeded, or certain garden beds need to be weeded. There's no direction from councillors on that. So there's no service level that says it should be twice a year, it should be 100% kept clear of weeds, it should be kept clear from debris at least once a week. And what that means is that when we're preparing our budgets, we essentially use last year's maintenance to project forward. That means we'll continue to do essentially what we have always done, and we'll also need to use those resources to respond to works requests. Whereas if you do have a service level, then that allows us to give you advice on if you wish to have this area 100% maintained free of weeds, this is the level of staffing that I'd require to do that. So it does give you a bit more planning. And so we've started to introduce service levels only this year, and we've focused on rural roads and a couple of other areas, but I think it will be something going forward that if council wants to set particular standards, and it could be things like the height of grass in parks, then service levels are the best vehicle to do that, and that lets us give you advice and say, well, if you want the grass in parks to be no higher than 3 centimetres, then that means this for our staffing regime.
Happy with that? Okay. There's no other questions without notice, councillors? No. There's no motions without notice, and there's no motions. There's no motions on notice. Sorry, motions without notice. I'll get it right in a minute. And there's no motions on notice. Item 302, councillors' diaries and communications. For noting that council resolved that the mayor and councillor diaries and communications as presented be noted. Any discussions on any of them matters? No discussions on the matter. We'll keep moving. Item 303, council workshops. No workshops. We'll keep moving. Item 304 is council decision status report and action item list. Council resolved that the status report and action item of open council meeting decisions be received. Any discussions on any of them matters?
Yeah, through you, Mayor, this the very top line. How are we going with it? We're going back to have it redesigned. The Strawn.
Yeah, so we brought it to council for both Zeehan and Strawn. Councillors asked for some other options. We have been in constant contact with the designers. The new layouts are finished, but we are waiting for the quantity surveyors to provide us costings before we can bring it back to council. There are long delays at the moment in professional services, so it is problematic for us because we obviously don't want to lose the grant, and we'll continue to push them.
Might it be prudent then, General Manager, to bring the design to the council if they're happy with it? Then there shouldn't be too many other changes, and then we're not going back to the quantity surveyor over and over again. Get the design right.
I think because we're presenting different options to council, and I think it will impact council's decision about, so for example in Zeehan there was the request to consider the additional squash court. That adds some cost I need to be able to provide to council. This is the cost of option 1, and this is the expected cost of option 2, option 3, so that you can make an informed decision. Otherwise, I guess you're making a choice in the absence of key.
The Strawn redesign was simply just moving one room to another, wasn't it? It was bugger all in the redesign there. There wasn't much going on there, so I can't see major difference to the quantity surveying cost there. It was bugger all.
It may well be. I think in any event, even if we brought it back to council, we wouldn't be going out. We're going out for construction of both at the same time. So,
Wait, we get both.
Right, no worries.
and I think there was also a request to look at for Strawn moving the location as well. So we've got to look at the costs of that, moving it around the.
Didn't we put that one on hold though?
Not that's the playground. I'm just talking about the Strawn.
Oh.
The centre. Yeah, that's what we've got
The
here.
gym.
Yeah, the gym. Yeah. And that's not talking about the gym there either. Is it?
So what's the request then? Is it to bring the Strawn one?
So it's only it's only talking about the Strawn gym and the Zeehan gym redevelopment, not the playground.
Yep.
So yeah, the playground's a totally separate matter and all that, isn't it?
No, I was talking about there was the request to consider whether we move the gym up around the corner. By Councillor Garrity, so it wasn't, so it could be expanded in future or something to that effect.
Put it on Meredith Street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I don't recall that discussion.
Oh,
Yeah.
Councillor Gary brought it up. I thought we
Yeah.
made a decision we wouldn't be looking at that.
That
We
might have
just
been while I
look
was
at
away. wasn't
the room. Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Our understanding of the minutes were we're bringing back 3 options on both to council, with costings for council to make a decision on. If the request is that we bring them back next meeting, whether we have the costings or not. I would be surprised if we didn't have the costings next meeting. We are pressuring them to get those done.
So I'd be happy to, do we need a motion on that to bring it back to the next meeting, or we can just ask you to?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Without the costings, it'll be difficult for you to make would have to
A
bring
fully
it back.
informed decision, I understand. Yeah.
But we can do it for information type.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realise we were doing a costing and moving it over there as well. Yeah, sorry.
And then obviously in Zeehan there were a couple of different options we need to look at for the squash court.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, item 305, Committee of Council reports, so there's nothing to report there. Oh, sorry, yes there is. Council resolved that the council committee reports as presented be noted, so we've got a report from the emergency management and also the education and training. Any discussions on them 2 reports? No. I guess just one thing I'd like to say is the work that was put in for the whale strandings down at Strawn, and the amount of work that went in from our staff, I guess, given the fact that Parks and Wildlife staff went on the ground early on, and it was left to our own people to point people in the right direction there. And I guess a call out to the agricultural companies in that area that, again, excelled with assisting with that operation. I think probably led the operation more than what any NRE did. So I'll might draft a thank you letter up for the agricultural hubs companies down there, the amount of work they put into that. It was a very successful job in the end, given that only a couple of days that Ocean Beach was closed, and going right into that long weekend too. They had the strand of whales out of there before the long weekend. Yeah. Okay. Item 306 is the General Manager report. The recommendation is that General Manager report as presented be noted. Someone like to move that way, please? Move Councillor Evans, seconded Councillor Shea. Any discussions on any of the items in the General Manager's report? No discussion. Put to a vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Keep moving to the right page. Item 307, correspondence. For noting, council resolved that correspondence inwards and outwards as presented be noted. So we've got two there that need a response. No name given, only email address about the disgusting whale loss. That was with regard to not allowing people down there to assist. I guess it was something that was asked by Parks and Wildlife at the time to shut the road off. Given that, you know, it is a it does become a workplace once people get down there working. So it is under, well, WorkSafe Tasmania will
Through you,
be
Mayor,
present.
there was a whole number of the Strawn community in 2007 who were trained by Parks and Wildlife or the Department of Natural Resources at the time to be first responders. There was something like 37 of the local community trained, so they're fully well aware of the workplace health and safety issues, the immediate issues they need to attend to save as much life as they can, and they were trained to do the basic, and well, not basic, but the very first triage across the beach. Now, those people were some of the first people who refused access to the site. So I think you'll find that the pretence of this letter, and certainly the pretence of a lot of discussion around Strawn, people certainly talking to me about it, and raised with Parks and Wildlife in the debrief about the event, was that why did they go to the trouble to train all these people, over 30 I believe, and then refuse them access to as first responders. And I think that's the nature of the discussion, more about having a dig at any individual. It was more about, these people have been trained, they understand all the safety issues, but they also understand the triage response and all of the things that go around that, and it's all about saving as much life as possible. So just to shed a little bit of light, the angst and the community anguish about, which may have led to this type of letter coming to us, was the fact that these people are well trained and trained by the first response agency.
So are they members of the Marine Mammal Conservation Program, like volunteers?
Probably not, no. I wouldn't think so. They were members of the Strawn community trained to be first responders because this happens so very often. And it will happen so very often again.
So that was discussed at the debrief.
I think it was certainly
NRA.
raised. I didn't go to the debrief, but certainly one of the ladies that brought this to my attention, I was unaware that we had people in the community trained to that level.
Yep.
But yeah, no, there was in 2007 that training was undertaken. It was undertaken by the First Response Agency, and it was undertaken so there was members of the community could hit the ground, start the triage process, see what animals could be saved, give them all the attention they could, and they're the first people who were turned around at these road blockages. And unfortunately, SES and council staff were probably the people manning those road blockages and operating on the advice from the agency. So I say what I'm saying just to give you some background information as to why there's so much angst that would lead to a letter like this being written.
And I guess from our point of view, our guys, well, SES or police, Tas Police, have probably done what they were
what they're instructed to do. I get that.
And I guess there's a falling down that these people were, if they were training the triage and first responders, they should have had some sort of identification to say that, and that's probably something where NRE have failed.
Yeah, for sure.
In their duties, and maybe that's something we, the Emergency Management Committee might be able to look at with most of them people are on that committee. That
it's something to further to that discussion. Some of these people have been responding to these events all their life.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this is not new to them. Certainly, people are strong. They've been doing it all their life, and it goes on forever, and it will go on for a lot longer now too. This is not going to be the last event of this nature. So the angst and the argument that presents such frustration to lead to this type of correspondence is the fact that the very people who live in the area and are turned around and considered idiots and not given an opportunity to exercise some of the skills and knowledge that they've built up and learned over many, many years.
It is important that there is a volunteer. So you can volunteer to do whale rescue, and those volunteers were mobilised to the site at the same time as paid park staff. I guess one of the issues might be that Strahan locals haven't maintained their association with the Marine Mammal Program, which is largely a volunteer organisation. I can understand why parks would be reluctant to let people in that have had training in 2007 and maybe not had refreshers over a period of time, don't know about the quality of their equipment and things like that. So I think one thing it is important for councillors to do is to let people know there is a way for them to actually be involved in marine mammal rescue, and there is a volunteer organisation dedicated to that.
The status of their equipment is shovels and buckets like it was 100 years ago. It hasn't changed.
Yeah,
They get down there and respond the same way.
Yeah, and I guess it is something which parks need to, or NRE need to look at moving forward as well. You know, if they want to keep
The
these
fact is that
volunteers
these other
organised.
people who are on some sort of a register, they were 12 hours away. There's people that tried to respond immediately and turned around. And I'm just giving you the background.
Yep, and maybe that's something from an advocacy side of things we can look at.
Yeah.
I can't say much because we never know who's going to be in this seat. But moving forward, we discussed with parks about some voluntary training and get back onto what they used to have before
Sure.
to help them out. And I guess that's one thing that's happened with parks on the West Coast. They've lost a lot of their rangers.
And they've lost absolute contact with the community in every 100% of the
They've
activities they do.
moved out of the community to major cities, and it has been a downfall of parks with our community. And maybe it's something we can reinvigorate and assist with that to try and get them to run the training courses again and get the volunteers back up to the numbers, and at least get the training they require. You know, because it is an issue that you'd hate to see someone get injured to save them a whale.
In terms of responding to this email, is there any, I guess I need some guidance from councillors how you want me to respond to this.
Maybe
this
just say that we'll respond to NRE with regards to setting up some voluntary training protocols around volunteers with regard to
Or perhaps
mammal rescue.
there is a way to reinvigorise those that were previously trained to become members of the association. Perhaps they could be written to or something like that and reminded. I don't know. But I think, going back to that fact that there are people with those skills that, perhaps the department could find a way to re-engage them somehow.
I know that Tas Police quite often, every year they've got a group of people that will assist with marine rescue on the lakes, and they ring up every year to make sure that we're still willing to be part of that organisation and make sure we've still got the craft that we had in the previous 12 months. So that happens every 12 months, that they reinvigorate that list to make sure that people are still current. And I think it's something that probably Parks and Wildlife should be encouraged to do as well.
With your support and permission, regardless of the outcome of the next couple of days, I can go and talk to the lady that brought this to my attention and re-inform her that she should keep her membership of.
It's the Marine Mammal Program. So it's
okay. Well, she might be unaware that they need to do that, so that's certainly I can provide the information.
Okay. And the second one, is that all you need?
Yep, that's fine. And then
Is the Steph Gallagher precedent. So we've got another letter back from Ms Gallagher with regard to the letter that was tabled at the previous meeting. Yes, well, I guess I do take on board that it was getting close to Christmas that I was able to find time to have the meeting, but I'm not sure whether she's mentioned that council staff council office was informed, but I don't think the executive was informed that they couldn't make it to the meeting at the time. So and that's where I was coming from, that I didn't know that they weren't able to get there, and was quite open to any other time for a meeting if they so wished at the time. And the comment about having a go at the unconformity, well, I don't think that might have been stated, but I guess it's a lot of that funding that's given to the unconformity doesn't come out of the council budget. We do some in-kind for the unconformity, and a lot of that money that does go to the unconformity does go towards artists in residency, and I guess and even local artists can obtain some of that funding if they so wish. Has anyone got any other discussions that want to have on that reply letter? Yep.
You say distribution of art grants from the public purse, that's usually state and federal. Council per se doesn't have arts grants, do we?
Well,
We have specific streams for various activities.
under the MOU with Unconformity, we provide $5,000 a year to their West Coast Artists Grants. So it's a total program of $15,000. We provide $5,000. The state government provides $10,000. So we provide the sort of the co-contribution that lets that program keep going. And that goes exclusively to West Coast artists not for producing specific artworks, but for things like purchasing a kiln or equipment and that sort of thing, which is part of the MOU that we signed with Unconformity.
That's right, yeah, Mayor, we don't get involved in how, or rather we certainly don't dictate to Unconformity how they distribute those funds. Do we have any, we don't provide caveats attached to that money, do we?
No, occasionally there is a council representative invited to be a part of grant funding decisions, but not in the recent past. So it's those grant funds are distributed by a panel of professional arts people that make the assessments to the Unconformity.
So you're looking for some assistance, General Manager, in how to respond?
Oh, this one's directed at the Mayor, so
That's me.
I dare say he wants some assistance.
I would
Responding.
suggest, Mayor, putting this to bed, because this looks like a table tennis match that could go on for some time. I would recommend putting it to bed, one way or another. We can't keep going to and fro in council meetings over this sort of issue.
No, for sure. But I guess the lady has sent this letter in. She was a little bit upset with some of the comments around the table at the last meeting. So I'll write back.
Her letter did say she was stranded here, and that was me that made that comment, and I stand by it. Her letter suggested to us that she was stranded here. So I don't believe there's any comment to be retracted, and I'm certainly not going to.
Very good.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll respond to that letter. I think that's the only other one that we needed to.
Can I, through you, Mayor, further on in the correspondence, there's a letter received from the West Coast Recreational Association.
Yep.
I attended the meeting with them, with Department of Fisheries, and they're quite concerned to the extent that they were saying that this was a public consultation meeting, but it wasn't. They had the meeting to inform us that they are making changes to the netting in the harbour. They're taking away night netting in the harbour. That's what they're doing. It wasn't to come and discuss it with us and find solutions. They came down to tell us that that's what they're doing. To much of the disgust of the people there, and myself included, that's not consultation. That is dictating what a decision that's already been made. There's a lot of scientific data that's suggesting that the skate is moving further from its normal habitat into the shallower water where we are netting, but nothing that indicates that they're into the 1.5 metres, which is where most nets are. At that 50 metre to the shoreline, you're not going to get outside 1.5 or 2 metres. So the protection of the skate from the process of removing that night netting is not going to achieve the result. What was mooted by a lot of the fisheries or the the recreational fishers and the members of this community was, if you're serious about it, make the entire harbour a marine wildlife park and get all activity out of there, and we'll put it back to them. But just simply picking on the netting from the shoreline to the 2 metre mark is not going to change much in the way of saving the skate. And I do believe that this wasn't a public consultation. This was a decision that was already been made, and they were simply turning up to inform us of that decision. So it's a pretty disappointing process that the government's used here, very disappointing, rather than under the banner of let's come and consult with you guys to try and find solutions. They've basically turned up and told us the decision's made, and that that Minister Palmer and that Minister Gents had already signed off on the interventions that they were there to execute that evening, or as of 1 November, sorry. So there's a lot more discussions to be had here. Yes, we understand that the skate is at risk. It's actually one of the highly endangered species now. But if you're serious about protecting the skate, then you can't just pick on nets to 50 metres in shallow water where there are no skates, not skate habitat. Pick on the elephant in the room and make it a wildlife park, and you'll probably protect the animal, but you won't protect it by just banning nighttime netting. And as anybody that knows, take nighttime netting away, you take away netting, because there's no edible species caught during the day. It's a nighttime netting only that gives you an edible species outcome. So you basically are taking the fishery away from the harbour to all West Coast and other licensed operators, or rather licensed fishers, who do come down and use the area for their families on over Christmas holidays, school holidays. They won't be able to undertake those activities, and you're basically having a big hit on the recreational fishery and the tourism industry by doing so. So I think there was a lot more to be said about this. I'm not suggesting that the council have anything to say, but I'm saying that the process used by the government to come down here and actually tell them that a decision was made and signed off by 2 ministers was not really an appropriate way to go about doing business, I'm afraid. I was pretty disappointed. Yeah, as are all of the members.
I think Brian's been speaking to the ministers. He was a little bit calmer at the recent activity in recent days. Yeah, so I think he might have got some relief or light
maybe
in the favour of what the Recreation Association was implying on the night. Not that I was there. Wasn't aware that
Councillor Newman was there and myself was there, but there was no science to suggest that, the Maugean skate doesn't habitat 2 metres of water. It habitats deeper water. It doesn't go into there. And if it is going into there, then its normal habitat's been impacted significantly. And why are they doing that?
Yep.
But no one's catching. There's no numbers in nets. The only people catching is IMS. We're not catching them. Recreational fishers aren't catching them because they don't habitat 2 metres of water. So it's an interesting decision.
Okay. Any other discussions on any of the correspondence, councillors? No. So moving on, 308, matters proposed for a closed meeting. Recommendation is that items 311 to 318.22 discussed by council in closed session. Someone like to move that way, please? Move Councillor Shea, second Councillor Evans. Put it to a vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Okay, closed meeting. Recommendation that the council resolve by absolute majority to go into closed session to consider the following matters as listed. Someone like to move that way, please? Move Councillor Evans, second Councillor Stringer. Put it to a vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. We now go into closed session.
Yep, time being 5:58.
5:58. Thank you.